Welcome to the Audible Farm podcast. This is your host, Peter Stockdale. If you missed the first episode, you can go back and listen to it on SoundCloud. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in to the second episode. I sit down with a good friend of mine, Dan Blair, and we talk about his time in Algona and the surrounding areas, us going through different gear and learning from one another. Overall, we've spent a lot of time together in the last couple of years, and we're going to go through that in the following podcast. All right, let's stop talking about it. Here we go. Dan Blair.
It's the Audible Farm podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, you ready to kick it?
Ready to kick it.
All right, let's kick it. What's up, Dan? How's it going?
Nothing really. Just
Oh.
hanging out with Peter.
Heck yeah, we're in the basement of my little jam pad here. Got the full stack sitting around. Got a drum set here, rock and roll. I'm sitting down today, Dan Blair. We're gonna talk about the two of us kind of growing up together, playing music, and figuring out how to traverse the guitar a little bit. But first, let's get into the Algona days. Dan played a
Yes.
lot of music in Algona,
I did.
and what do you got for a story there?
Well, it was about a decade-long process of kind of, really rediscovering my love for music and really kind of diving into the whole meat of it. I always had loved music and been somewhat of a musician, but never really had a lot of knowledge behind it. It was all just kind of as flying by the seat of my pants, really.
Yeah, we can backtrack just a touch here. When the two of us were growing up, we played in a band called Active Input in high school.
Yes, fun
and
times.
and we both bought beginner instruments. We were both kind of just learning how to even play the guitar at all. And for the most part, we just read tabs and went with the tablature. So after we were done playing in the band, after Active Input, you heard in the previous podcast, our drummer Clint left, and we just kind of didn't really,
We stopped.
didn't really know where to go from there. So we were stuck at the tablature level and didn't have much theory. So this is probably the point where Dan ends up figuring out more theory on his own.
Yeah. I mean, even going back slightly before the Algona days, I was going back to college in Spencer, Iowa,
Mhm.
and I met a fellow named Tom Bowe, and he had this crappy acoustic guitar. It had a hole in the front of it. It was on loan to him from a friend of his, and um, we'd become friends, and I seemed to whenever I went over to his apartment, I seemed to get drawn to that acoustic guitar for some reason because he didn't know very much and I knew a little bit,
Mhm.
and that was one of the things that kind of got me back into playing guitar, was teaching him a little bit
Yeah.
about how to play and
Yeah. So like, what kind of stuff would you end up playing?
I just taught him, how to make a power chord
Yeah.
and how to make a bar chord and
Mhm.
some open chords and blah blah blah, and
So
it was funny. I would play something that I remembered from back in the day, like an old Offspring kind of lick
yeah.
over and over again, and he would free rap over it.
Oh man, that's pretty cool.
It was pretty legit. But after that, I had decided to go get my own acoustic guitar because I really wanted to start playing again,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what snowballed the whole thing.
So you were like, you're on a hunt for an acoustic at this point,
Yeah,
and this is pre-Algona.
yeah.
All right. So what kind of acoustic did you end up hunting down?
I got a used acoustic guitar from an old high school buddy,
Who's that?
Josh Olson.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's just an old Yamaha.
That's sweet. They're for being a cheap instrument, they usually hold together pretty well over the test of time.
Oh yeah, I did a little fixing up on it. Uh, treated the fretboard, got some new strings, some new pins, and it ended up being a very nice guitar. I kept it for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Even fixed it up one time. The tuning pegs started coming loose,
Oh man.
so
So,
I I uh, I ended up putting a bunch of wood glue and material and where the screws were, and
oh yeah, you do the old you had a screw strip out of it or something like that. So you
yeah,
had to end up. I always used wood glue and toothpicks was always my
yeah.
my cheater, and then you could, if you had to, you could drill it back out.
I had some epoxy stuff too that kind of worked nice.
Yeah. So you got this acoustic. You start playing. What kind of jams are you doing?
I think the first one that I ever learned, because I was at that time had a terrible time singing and playing the guitar at the same
Yeah,
time.
there's a learning curve for sure.
Oh, yes, there sure is. Um, I think the first song that I learned was "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd.
That's a good one.
That is a great
It's,
tune.
it's a great one to go out and learn for any beginners. It's for the most part just four chords.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in all
Yeah.
basicness. But yeah, so you start jamming out a couple songs. At what point in time does it occur to you that you can actually sing and play? Because you are a well accomplished singer in your own right from your days in junior high and high school.
Yes.
You come from a very good lineage of singers, a pedigree, if you will. And so, at what point in time did you realize I can actually play this guitar and sing at the same time? Because that was one of the issues we always had in active input. Was we were so young and so new to everything that playing the guitar and singing was so difficult. We couldn't ask somebody to do that because that usually meant compromising one of the aspects,
Oh
either the
yeah.
singing or the guitar
Yeah.
playing. So it was really tough. So at this point in time, you realize you can sing. What are some of the what are some of the songs you got going down, and like where do you decide that you're gonna actually attempt to go take this public?
Um, it probably wasn't until a couple years later.
All right.
Um, it was a kind of a snowballing process. I think I learned that song, and then I learned a couple other songs, and I tried to write a song,
Yep.
and um, and each time it got easier and easier and faster and faster, and pretty soon, I mean, I got to the point where I could learn a song in like a day,
Uh,
and almost have it down to where I'd accept it.
yeah. I mean, you get it down good enough where it's like, yeah, I got 90% of it down or something like that. You got the basic gist of it down.
Yeah, so that process probably took at least a year to 2 years.
To get a handful of songs under your belt and get used to singing and playing, or
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
All right. So you ended up playing some shows in Algona as a solo artist.
yes.
Uh, down at the I guess from
Yeah,
what
it was the
Afterlife.
afterlife at the
Yep.
time, yeah.
All right. So you're at the Afterlife. What do you call yourself at this point in time?
Well, I started out as Dan Blair, and I think the first show that I did, it was like a 2 hour long gig,
Okay.
uh, which is one of the longest ones I've ever done,
That always
actually.
seems to be the way it goes.
But I made it through it. I was hoarse by the end of it.
Mhm.
Uh, that was a lot, and I'm surprised I pulled it off, being that kind of fresh
Yep.
to
I
the whole thing.
I totally get you. Like I want to say like my third or fourth show with Three Finger Betty was a 2 hour show. And that's like a lot of time to fill with punk songs that are 3 minutes long.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
so yeah, I'm no stranger to the 2 hour show, and it's not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah,
So
I don't think doing singer-songwriter stuff, playing open chords, is much different than doing
it's
punk music,
yeah,
because
it's
they're all, uh, you know, no solos, nothing.
yeah,
Maybe a little bridge.
yeah. So you're playing 2 hour shows. You're at the Afterlife, and they obviously ask you to come back and play more shows.
Yeah. Um, for a while there, I was playing nearly every month. There would be something that came up that they needed an opening, uh, act for, and I guess I was a go-to guy for the guy running the bar at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you had the proximity. You worked nearby. You lived nearby.
Yeah,
It worked out really well for you.
literally down the street.
Yeah. So at this point in time, you are.
Well, I started out as just being Dan Blair,
Okay.
and then I was always on the hunt for other musicians
Yeah,
to come and join me up on stage, because doing it by yourself, it's fun, but
it's more fun with somebody
it's more
else.
fun with somebody else. So I always tried to get people involved. Uh, One of the guys who I'm still kind of involved with is a buddy of mine, Eric Miller.
Yep.
He plays saxophone, so we did acoustic guitar and saxophone kind of duet for a while. We tried to get somebody to play the drums for a while. It didn't really work out
Yeah,
as well as we had hoped.
that seems to be the biggest hunt in almost any music circle is hunting for a drummer. I don't know why, but
It
it's
is ridiculously tough.
yeah. I mean, it's drumming's not easy. I've got a drum kit here, and I'm definitely not the best at it. If you want me to play anything outside of ZZ Top and AC/DC, I'm not your man. So you and Eric are jamming some shows.
Yeah,
You can't find a drummer.
Dirty D and the Scoundrels.
So you called yourself Dirty D and the Scoundrels at this point in time. You're playing once a month or so at the Afterlife. Who
Yes.
are you opening up for?
Oh, we opened up for quite a few people actually. There were touring bands from uh, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Illinois, Florida. Uh, some of the maybe more notable ones, I guess I should mention. Um, Elysium. They're out of
Totally.
North Carolina, I
Yep.
believe.
Heard of them.
South Carolina. Another Lost Year.
Yep.
Those guys are really cool if you ever get a chance to meet them.
All right.
Let's see. Screaming for Silence. I think they're an Omaha-based
Yep.
band.
Definitely.
The guy that owned the Afterlife used to drum for him, so that was
Oh, I didn't know that.
that was the in there.
That's pretty sweet.
I I sh- I wish I could remember more of the opening bands, because
Yeah.
a lot of them were super good too.
Yeah.
But
I get that way
easy,
too.
It's easy to remember the headliners. I did get the opportunity to open up for Sean Danielson from Smile Empty Soul.
Shout out.
He was doing an acoustic tour, and came through town on like a Wednesday or something like that.
That's still pretty sweet though.
Yeah, totally terrific opportunity.
Yeah, it's always fun when you get the opportunity to play ahead of some people like that, especially if they got music that you kind of enjoy or something.
Yeah, yeah. Zach Meyer from Shinedown.
Yep. Okay.
He did the same thing. He was coming through with a couple other guys, I guess.
So you've opened up for not only bands but like solo acts of heavy hitters from I guess you would call it the 2000s era and on.
Oh yeah, yep.
So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it
W-
was epic.
What do you think was one of the biggest shows you played while you were doing that?
One of the biggest shows that I played.
Because I mean, occasionally I'd come to the Afterlife and watch you play, and sometimes it's packed, sometimes it's not. It kind of just depends on what else is going on in town at the time. But I mean, a couple times I went up there and saw you, and the place is almost wall to wall, and that wasn't even when there was any big acts going. So I was wondering if there was anything where they like almost sold out the Afterlife, or anything
That
like
I
that.
was playing, or
Yeah.
that I went to
Yeah, that you're
there?
playing there.
Oh, it was probably either Another Lost Year or um, Screaming for Silence. They probably had some of the biggest crowds
Yeah.
when I played there. The Sean Danielson and the Zach Meyer though, those were pretty decent crowds.
Yeah, I could totally see Screaming for Silence because I feel like they've got quite a bit of
They do have a big fan
a
base up
big fan
there.
base. It might not be everybody in the town likes them, but I think that almost every town you go to, you can find some people that know them and like them. So that's pretty sweet. At what point in time did you end up joining up with the Muscle Shirts?
Well, one of the guys that I worked with at the time was a guitarist for the Muscle Shirts,
All right.
and it was probably a couple years after I started playing, um, and I had already begun kind of doing my kind of solo career, I guess you could say.
Yep.
Um, that they actually the members of the band asked me if I would help them with their guitar section because they had two guitarists already, but
Yeah.
they weren't very accomplished guitarists.
Okay, so they brought you into just to fill out sound then, more or
Yeah,
less.
yeah, more or less, and it was an all right gig.
Yeah.
We made money when we played, but we only played like once or twice a year.
What kind of stuff did you play? A cover band, right?
It was a cover band, yeah. The stuff that like middle-aged baby boomers want to hear while they're drinking at a bar.
Yeah. I mean, that's legit. That is the main populace around this area,
Yeah.
and there is definitely a high demand for cover bands that are willing to play those kinds of music.
Oh, for sure.
And I enjoy the music. It might not be my favorite thing to listen to, but man, I don't. It's hard to deny a cover band like that because it's not like they're gonna play a song you don't like.
Put 6 Schlitz in me and I'll fucking enjoy anything.
Yeah, I guess. Oh man. So you guys are rocking out shows as the Muscle Shirts. You're playing what do you got, acoustic? Were you playing
Uh,
leads? What are you doing at
well,
this point in time?
I was playing an acoustic guitar. I would do most of the picking work that they wanted.
All right.
Um, at a later point in time, probably close to the end of when I was playing with them, is when I started experimenting with playing more leads on an electric guitar.
Yeah.
Because I had never really done that or been able to grasp that very well. Uh, and so I started to practice that a lot more, and I started to really, I mean, along with you, kind of
Yeah.
understand more of the fundamentals of lead guitar and the theory of it all.
Yeah.
And I started to try and incorporate that into the band actually, and I had a lot of pushback and a lot of kind of, I think I ruffled a little bit of feathers trying to, because they were all so comfortable doing what they had done, because they had been a band for like a decade
Oh, yeah. So,
doing the same thing, and so
yeah, I can see that too. You just step in and let's change it just a little bit, or let's kick it up a notch. Bam, and everyone's like,
yeah,
I don't know about this.
yeah,
I could see that happening.
especially them. I mean, they were kind of middle-aged dudes themselves playing stuff that baby boomers like to hear at a bar,
Mm-hmm.
kind of watered down versions of it.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still a decent gig.
Yeah,
I have
yeah. I learned a lot from them actually.
yeah. I think it's funny that there is a little bit of a split in the music scene between the cover bands and the bands that make original music. When in all actuality, I have no preference to one or the other. I definitely enjoy playing covers, but I enjoy playing original music too. I I mean, I've definitely got nothing against cover bands. Some of my favorite bands from the area are cover bands, as a matter of fact. Riddled with Class,
Oh yeah, great
RWC.
band.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I mean, they kill it. They're like they're
every
more
time.
they're just below the baby boomer age type music. We're talking alt rock and stuff like that. They're
Yeah,
great. They're
90s.
great for bars for the slightly younger generation. And the other one's Chris Carr Band. I mean,
Oh,
every time I see
those
them,
guys, yes.
I am wowed. I am so wowed. Every one of them can sing. They're all super proficient in their
Yeah, their musical
instruments.
profile is just extremely huge.
It's insane, and they all know every song. It seems like. I mean, they're definitely some of the funnest cover band I guess to see would be the Chris Carr band in my opinion. But so we're playing cover songs at this point in time, and you're starting to learn how to do your own leads. And this is kind of where you and I joined back up together on our musical quest because we had split ways after the active input days for the most
Yes,
part.
yes.
And the two of us start kind of trying to figure stuff out on our own, and then we would get together like once a week or so because we didn't live in the same town. So we'd join up, and I think we'd pretty much just
We,
trade off, like, oh, I learned this, and it's like,
yeah,
well, that's cool, but I learned this, so we'd like double the learning, I
yeah.
think. So, I
It
mean,
it happened pretty quick, really.
yeah, I mean, I'd say within a year we were blues guitar ready, maybe even quicker than that. And it's kind of weird because, like, I'm sure you have the same problem I do when you go online to search for something to try to figure out what exactly is going on. You find 20 bad videos and one good video.
Oh, that's the
And it
worst.
might not even be that the video's bad. I think a lot of it is just that it just doesn't click with me or you or whoever's watching it at the time. But there's nothing worse than when somebody's trying to tell you how to run through a riff or how to run a scale, and they go so slowly through it. And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
there's such a weird fine line because if they're just ripping through it too fast, it's it's
You're kind of like, wait, let me
yeah,
catch up.
yeah. There's no way to try and catch. And if
But
they
if
go
they're
too
going,
slow,
yeah, exactly.
it's insanely dumb.
It's
So the two of us would pretty much just siphon out as much junk as we could and then show each other the cool stuff, if not on the video, in person while we were playing.
yeah,
So that was one of the
yeah,
things I always thought was kind of cool was we figured out, 12 bar blues together. What is 12 bar blues? How easy is it? Oh man, this is 80% of blues songs.
hey, can we change this up? Yes, we can.
All right,
Here's how we do it.
well, if I play some 12 bar blues and you solo over it, what key am I in? And then you just start going, and then, all right, now let's flip flop after 12 bars, and then you do it and I'll solo. And we would just kind of repeat those kind of deals or
Yeah.
whatever. It was about that time we are starting to learn stuff together, so we start trying to hunt down some guitar gear together. And
Yes.
I snag up a looper pedal, we get some backing tracks going and stuff, and we start
Oh,
jamming to the backing tracks.
and you are such a gearhead. And
Uh,
I think
yeah,
yeah.
as we're sitting here looking at all of my stuff.
uh I I am a gearhead too, but I don't think I have as much as you.
Yeah, I will have to say that you've had a knack for not buying much gear, but the stuff you buy is always like a weird steal of a find that you don't buy much, but what you do buy is like stuff you probably won't ever sell, so it's pretty neat. Whereas I'm kind of in the boat where I like to try things and sell them off if I don't get along with them as well or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're at the time we're starting to solo and things like that, and we're thinking to ourselves, how do people get all these awesome tones that they're getting out of their stuff? So we start going through reverb pedals and the whole effects loop of the guitar, and we're
Oh,
starting to debug.
time delay,
Yeah, we're starting to get all those things figured
distortion.
out. You and I are kind of alike. We both like overdrive and boost
Oh yeah.
with a little bit less gain coming out of the amp. I feel like it makes it hotter without having too much gain and feedback and distortion, and without compressing it all to the point where it just sounds like metal. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do also feel that you lose a little bit of articulation when you start stacking too much gain in there.
Amps too. Amps was another one that you gotta add in there with the gear.
Yeah,
Getting whether it's solid state or a tube amp. What are your preferences? What do you like? And
yeah,
I think I leaned more towards the tube amp when I used to have a solid state, but when I started playing tube amps more, I kind of liked it better.
yeah. It's such a weird thing because I prefer tubes over solid state, but every time I go back to a solid state, I kind of re-fall in love with it. I had that Marshall MG stack for a while, and I recently sold it, and I'm kind of regretting it. But at the same time, I didn't play it very much, so it's good that it's no longer with me. But the guy that bought it from me is using the crap out of it, I'm sure.
Oh, that's
Those,
great.
I mean, they're awesome amps. They've got great tone. I mean, you could buy a Marshall MG full half stack for like $300 or so, and that's a steal as far as I'm concerned, especially for how much noise and you get that Marshall tone. But yeah, I mean, I prefer tubes. You can see that I've got a couple tube amps here,
Yeah.
and actually I have one solid state, and it's buried in the back, and that's the Randall over there. But that's the yeah, I don't know. I definitely enjoy tubes, but you still kind of got to figure out exactly your niche because I prefer the class PV Classic 30. It's just what I used because it was cost effective compared to a Marshall, and then I kind of fell in love with it over time because of just the way it sounds and the way I can get sounds to come out of
The
it
different tones.
based on my
It's
pedal setup and stuff
versatile.
like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're pretty close. It's like one vanilla ice cream compared to another. They're completely different, but they're both vanilla ice cream, you know. And you ended up not going the same direction as I did because you were dabbling with possibly getting a classic 30, but you actually
Yes. Yeah. I was.
ended up at a guitar shop that I was at, and
It
it
was weeks before that, wasn't it?
yeah, I had been to it about a month earlier without Debo knowing it, and Debo's Dan, by the way, if anybody.
That's me.
So I had went a few weeks earlier and bought an amp from the Guitar Farm. Is it in New London?
It is New
All
London.
right, Guitar Farm in New London. Huge shout out. We love you.
Go there. Buy
Yeah,
his stuff.
I love it.
Jesus.
He goes through a lot of gear. His prices are very
Very reasonable.
very reasonable. He's also very honest with you about everything. The amp I bought was
And knowledgeable too.
yeah. I mean, the amp I bought had a decal on the front that was not time period correct, but the decal was still. I mean, so he was just like, this isn't the one that came from the '80s, but it's still a Randall decal on the front. Okay, fair enough. You know, like if he's gonna be that honest with me, I've got no issues with it. So,
Yeah.
and I've enjoyed the amp. I've yet to play it live, but it's kind of funny. Debo ends up going to New London, and he also picks up a Randall, but he doesn't get a head like I got. He ends up getting a combo amp.
Yeah. 212s.
Yeah. Do you know what the model number is on that?
It's an RT30.
Woo. Yeah.
It's a pretty early model, I believe.
Yeah. It's got the green Tolex on it. It's a nice one.
Yes.
The two of us played a show together. A couple years ago in Humboldt called the Rockin' Picnic, and at that point in time, you were borrowing my Classic 30,
Yes,
and
I
I was
was.
going through a PV-JSX 2x12 combo, which is probably my favorite amp, but it's also like 100 pounds, so it never leaves my basement. Uh,
It's a good reason why it never leaves.
yeah, it made it to one practice this year, and that was enough for me. But by the time the second year came around, because we had played it this most recent summer, about a month ago, you had gotten your Randall. We're doing some practices. I can't believe the tone that's coming out of this thing.
I had problems believing it too.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know what I did, or
I. It's hard to
I just
describe it.
plugged it in pretty much.
Yeah, it's hard to describe how it sounds different, but it sounds so good. It's trebly without being too brittle. It's bassy without being boomy at all. I mean, it's so wild. Some of that's probably the fact that you use a pretty nice guitar. So that's
Yeah, that double agent OG Reverend.
yeah. Reverend makes great stuff
Gotta give
too.
a shout out to them.
Definitely an underestimated guitar company by most people's standards.
Yeah, I've talked to several people, and I've told them I play a Reverend, and they're like, "What's that?"
Yeah, I mean, you and I even ended up at the last Rockin' Picnic asking a guy what he was playing, and it was a
Yeah.
Reverend. It was
Yeah,
a
semi-hollow body.
big old semi-hollow body. Kind of looked like an Epiphone Dot, but it was a Reverend. Oh man, it was crazy.
I went home and looked that up too.
Yeah, that was Barrel House Rockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yep.
Barrel House Rockets. The guitarist for them was playing one of those, and those guys are also an awesome band.
It's like a $1,500 guitar.
Yeah, don't doubt it. I mean, they're good. So you and I, we're practicing together. We're going through gear together. We end up finding a nice little decent setup that works for both of us. And somebody gets in contact with me and asks me to play the Rockin' Picnic in 2017. And at the time, I was in a band called Three Finger Betty. But the unfortunate part about that is that Three Finger Betty was uh, adult-oriented content, and this was a family event.
Yes.
Um,
Very
shout out, I
adult.
gotta give a shout out to John Waugh because he keeps giving me crap about how I called Three Finger Betty adult-oriented and stuff, and he just wants me to tell everyone that he swears a bunch, and that's what it is. So um, there's a little bit of profanity. I'm not gonna risk it at a show, especially not in my hometown. So
Yeah.
I put in the request to throw together a handful of songs with Dan, and him and I are going to get a Digitech Trio looper pedal. It's the Trio Plus. I bought it when it was on sale, and it's a hell of a practice tool for anybody that's beginning. And
I agree.
I still want to use this thing live and play more with it live.
Put it through the effects loop though.
Yeah, you got to hook it up all the way to make it fully viable to do its full 9 yards. And it's kind of complex, but that was like what I first started using to get really into gear because I could hook that into a PA, and that's when I bought a PA so I could send the drums and anyways. So we programmed this Digitech Trio Plus, and we go to the Rockin' Picnic in 2017, and the two of us with basically just drums and backing bass played.
Bass guitar and there I think there was a little
Oh, we
rhythm.
did have a rhythm guitar in there too.
Yeah.
So we ended up playing 5 songs, a couple ZZ Top songs. We played Tush, we played Just Got Paid, we played Going Down by Freddie King, we played Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, and we also played Midnight Rider by the Allman Brothers. A-
Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan.
yeah, I mean, yeah, whoever you want to throw.
I don't
We
know.
kind of
We might,
blended the
yeah,
two
yeah, a
the
little
two
bit.
versions a little bit because I don't know. I definitely like SRV's attack through the song. He seems to be just blow through the song
Yeah, very
like
simplified.
yeah.
Kind of none of the extra gobbledygook.
So
That
we play the show. It goes uh better than the promoters had originally thought because they gave us such a short notice, and we were compensated for our act, and they actually asked us to come back the next year. So the next year
2018.
they get in contact with me and they say, "Do you want to play a show again?" And I said, "Yes, but would it be okay if I attempted to pull together a full band?" I felt like it was justified to have more than just you and I and a box on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
There's something to be said about the live sound having an actual bassist with you,
Actual drummer.
and this way I didn't have to worry about mixing the drums and bass on stage through a pedal before I sent it out to the. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of a pain in the butt for the sound guy because if my drums and bass aren't loud enough, he's not gonna get a proper mix of them, and he's there's gonna be hard for him to compensate it anyways. So I got in contact with you and asked you about it, and we had decided to pull together a handful of musicians and try to do a one-off show with. We chose Jeff Blummel from the Chris Carr Band,
Oh,
and
great guy.
I love that guy to death. And we did Nick Earhart from Riddled with Class. We gave both of those guys a
Another
shout
solid
out.
dude.
We gave both of them a shout out earlier. We chose them as the musicians. They both graciously accepted and took a one-off position, and we practiced for about a month together.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 times.
I want to say we had four or five maybe, but yeah. So we get together, play some shows, and we ended up going to, or we get together to do some practices, and we ended up going to play the show, and the show ended up going really well. We kept basically the same list of songs, except
A little switched up.
we switched up the order, and we played "Gots to Get Paid" by ZZ Top first, and ended it with "Just Got Paid," and then they wanted another song, and we didn't actually practice another song really, so we chose
Yeah.
we chose "Midnight Rider" to play again because it's fairly simple. Dan's got the pipes to sing it and sing it well.
I try.
So the second I ended up not singing it because I'm not gonna sing a song that requires that good of singing, and that was one reason I wanted to have a couple of good singers with me was if by chance we were gonna do a song that required actual good singing, not that Jimi Hendrix and ZZ Top aren't like good singers, but it's just like I had to have somebody there do backup vocals and everything else. So Debo ends up ripping out Midnight Rider. It was great. Pretty much gets a standing ovation as we walk off. I love playing that show, man.
Yeah, that was fun.
The Rockin' Picnic easily the biggest show I've been to 2 years in a row. I've been playing music. I played about 50 to 100 shows in the last 2 years. It is
It's
the
packed.
it we are one of the first bands that play, and there's already like 200 people at Sheldon, not counting the people that are still in their tents waking up, not counting the people just rolling in, not
Yeah.
counting the people
Yeah.
in the merch tent, not counting the people cooking the food. And there's like 200 people sitting in front of you watching you play this from your hometown. It's
It's a crazy
a
event.
little intimidating at first, but you get used to it and you think, something like this didn't used to be around when I was younger, and when it was the Abate rally, the biker rally that used
Oh
to come
yeah,
through
yeah,
town, and
yeah.
and we weren't allowed to go to that for obvious
No.
reasons. So, not nor would I really either.
There's
So,
more adult content there than Three Finger Betty.
yeah, Three Finger Betty wouldn't be adult content enough for that. That's how adult the biker rally was in town. So yeah, I mean, I hope I get asked to play again next year. If not, I understand because I think this is one of the first times they've had a band play 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Even though we changed a little bit, and we were the curtain jerker 2 years in a row for the most part.
Yeah.
So, um,
What? Who were the guys that played first? It was a
I can't believe you're gonna ask me this because I don't
da,
know.
da, 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 da.
I might have to plug it in post production if I think about it. Although,
Shout out to them though, because
yeah,
they rocked, and they had a similar situation that we had the year before,
yeah,
where their drummer pulled out
they had a
like
drummer for
super late.
they had a drummer for 3 days. The drummer hadn't played in like 2 or 3 years, and they were just like, "You want to learn these?" And he said, "Sure." Like I said, I've got the poster for it. It's hanging upstairs, unfortunately, and we're in a very
We're in a
different room,
dark
so
basement.
it's not that dark.
Right.
It's well lit. So we play that show, and that's definitely one of my favorite shows to play every year. I I let you actually take like 90% of the leads, and it was probably my favorite choice I've made because I chose to sing due to the fact that we called ourselves the Stockyard the next year. So in 2018, we go under the guise as the Stockyard. I figure if they ask me again, I better rotate the musicians around. So I namesaked it after myself, and that way I can cycle through a different set of drummer or something if I need to. That way they don't get tired of seeing the same couple people up there every year. It keeps
Yeah.
it fresh, keeps it fun, keeps it local, which is what their slogan is for the most part.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's the same concept as this Audible Farm thing. I just wanted to have musicians from around the area get the representation they deserved and maybe get a different light to shine in. So that's one reason I started the podcast. That's one reason I started videotaping people and putting them on YouTube.
And we appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, man. So, what kind of music are you doing these days? I know that you are not currently in a band.
I'm not. No.
However, you do have a back catalog of solo material that is cover bands that you do. I mean, probably dozens and dozens and dozens of songs. You could easily cover an hour at a bar if you wanted to, you think?
Oh yeah. Probably in the hundreds
All right, so
of songs in my back catalog. I might need to dust off the cobwebs on some of them,
understandably.
but definitely got a few under my belt.
All right, so here's the first call out. Dan Blair's a terrific musician. He can sing better than probably most singers you can find. He plays well. He knows how to play leads. Well versed in anything rock and roll and blues. The guy needs a band. He's super talented. He
I need a band.
he deserves it. If anybody deserves it, he does. And yeah, this is the call out if anybody's looking for a guitarist or a singer, or even better, a guitarist that sings, because that's I'll tell you what, I'm a guitarist that sings, but I don't sing very well. We're talking solid 5 out of 10 here. Debo's like 8 or 9 out of 10 singing level. I mean, it's awesome. So this is the call out. Anybody looking for a singer, drummer, no, singer or guitarist?
No, I
Not-
can't
not-
play drums.
Not a drummer. So I try to do this once a show and give everyone some representation this way. And I definitely think you're one of the people that deserves to have. You deserve to go out there and play. And I totally
Thank
play with
you.
you more, but like I already have 2 bands I'm in, and
Yeah, that makes it hard.
if I could split the time, I would. And you know I would. But I just can't do it in good honesty and good nature and feel like I can represent myself in the other two bands well enough to do that. So yeah, I stretched myself kind of thin doing the Stockyard show, but I'm super thankful you did that with me. We ended up rocking a Ted Nugent song, "Stormtroopin',"
Oh
and
yeah.
that took quite a lot of people by surprise because they just didn't know what it was, and it we had a couple guys come out and just be like, "Oh, I can't believe you played some Ted Nugent." It's like, yeah, dude, it's
Yeah,
so good.
dude.
The guys from the Barrel House Rockets were totally into the fact that we played "Gots to Get Paid," which is from the new ZZ Top album. I didn't have anybody say anything about how we bookended our sets with "Gots to Get Paid" and "Just Got Paid,"
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I don't think I had anybody either.
I did dedicate "Just Got Paid" to all the hard-working musicians out there because y'all deserve to get paid. Um,
Oh yes.
and
Don't settle for any less,
no,
kids.
did you see the article that was in the Little Village mag that was the guy talking about trying to retire the $5 show? That's
No.
definitely an article worth looking up. If anybody's out there that's seen it, shoot us a line on Twitter at Audible Farm and tell us what you think about that. I'm going to try to ask some people some opinions on that on the show. Basically, the shortest version of it is there's a guy that's saying we should retire the $5 show because it doesn't pay anyone anything justifiable, and there should be like a $10 show because the $5 show is from the 80s and based on how much money
On
people.
inflation and
Yeah, so it should be about a $10 show. In all honesty, I think somebody figured the math out at about $14 a show, but so is
15 like minimum wage. $15.
is the $5 show ruining independent music scene, or
I don't know. I think maybe the pay to play is ruining the music scene.
it's definitely a discussion that needs to be had, but I feel like the parallels for it all are weird because if you want to do a free show, you'll find bands that want exposure and they're willing to play for nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you're not going to eliminate free shows. You're not going to eliminate people not getting paid.
No.
Okay, so with those out of the way, you have bands that like what I'm in where we expect to get paid but can't always get paid, and occasionally we will do a pay to play in front of a lot of people.
Yes.
But the downside of that is you do a pay to play and you 99.9% guarantee yourself that you're not going to get paid because you're paying to be on the show.
Oh, almost take a loss.
Yeah, so the way it figures out is if all the bands pay to play and all the people pay to come in, that should pay for the band and pay for the bar and maybe a little bit then some. Maybe not, but that should barely. And I get the gist from all the promoters because the promoters got to get paid too. But I also feel like there's a lack of promotion since Facebook's taken hold.
Oh, for sure.
And that definitely has something to be said, but also if you hang a flyer, who's going to look at it? How many times do you stop in to look at bulletin boards these days?
Wow.
No, never, I don't ever do it. So like the flyer, nobody wants to see a flyer anymore. You hang flyers and you might as well just like hang a piece of garbage on the wall in most places because nobody wants to see it and people walk past. I don't know the last time I was enticed by a flyer, and it's sad to say that, but I also live in small town Iowa, so I don't get to see too many flyers,
No.
but
I mean, you go to your local grocery store, maybe.
yeah, and even then it's just like I'll snow blow your lawn,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
okay, like that's a flyer that we get around here, and this
And
is
it's not a sexual flyer either.
no. So I mean, it's nothing against the $5 show. It's nothing against the $10 show. I just feel like there's a wide range of things happening out there in the music scene, and it makes it kind of odd, especially when you got to look at who is getting paid, how much they're getting paid, why they're getting paid. There is definitely something to be said about people undervaluing themselves, though, as
Oh,
well.
yes.
Um,
That's one thing I learned playing back in the Algona days. Don't undervalue yourself.
no, a lot of musicians will, like, let's say you're playing a guitar in front of somebody and like, oh, you're so good, and you say, no, I'm not. The reason you know you're not good is because you know how much farther you have to go to become the best.
Yeah.
Which is
Oh, being the best is the goal.
yeah. So it's so much farther down the road to be the best. But these people that have no frame of reference look at what you're doing and say it's good. But at the same time, these are the people that try to say, "I'll give you $50 to come here and play for an hour," and it's like, well, I mean, That's decent.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but I've got to drag all this stuff here and practice it, and then
And I've been practicing for years.
yeah, and the
Hours,
somebody
hours and
wrote
hours every day.
a reply to that retire the $5 show in the letter to the editor of the Little Village mag, which I think is out of Cedar Rapids area. But the article that the guy wrote back was something to the effect, I think he said something about musicians are people who take $5,000 worth of gear in a $500 car to a $50 show.
Ouch.
And that seems too real sometimes, and other times
Ouch.
I will have to say I have gotten some paydays that made my jaw drop because of how good they were, and I've gotten some that were so low, but it's also expected because if you go to a bar on a Friday night and you're the musical entertainment and there's 3 people in there, you're probably not gonna. It's just the way it works. You're probably not gonna get paid very
Yes.
well,
Yeah. That's
especially if you're
understandable.
going under the guise of getting paid a portion of the bar tab at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's totally understandable, but the retire the $5 show is something that I feel like maybe you should go out check that article out. Everybody I feel like should go look that article up. Just search Little Village Mag on online and then retire the $5 show. It'll be there. It was one of the letters to the editor. It's very well written. It brings up very good points. I just feel like I mean there's no one blanket solution to this for sure, but that's just my I guess my short skinny on it. I don't have too much to deal with the band finances because I am a new member in both of the bands I'm in, and I'm still pretty far away from the band purse, and it's totally justifiable because in Unity I'm so green in Unity that everyone else outranks me based on how long they've been playing music, even in the Des Moines scene, because
Yeah.
I mean, every
Yeah.
single one of those guys has 10 years of music experience publicly over me, which is kind of crazy to say. So, and John Waugh runs Three Finger Betty. That's his baby. I mean, he's front man. He writes most of the material. He's the head honcho. So I don't have too much knowledge about running a band and all the finances. And what I do is what very little you and I have had with the stockyard, and
No, just
we've had very good compensation and a very good time with it.
split it evenly.
Yeah, and we've always,
Spread it around.
and it's just one of those things where you and I have been lucky enough when we were playing together because we've only done 2 shows and we've only dealt with one promoter together.
Yeah.
But we just sit down and have a talk with them, and they pay you justifiable amount, and everybody's okay. I've never once had an issue going out to the Rockin' Picnic
No.
ever, like not even a little bit.
No.
It's mind blowing how smoothly everything there runs. I mean, even down to the
He-
sound guy. Like the sound guy at the Rockin' Picnic is definitely the sound guy at the Rockin' Picnic is definitely one of the best. It's one of the best sound places I've ever been to.
He's also a musician too, so he kind of knows the racket.
Yes. I mean, man, I just can't say enough good things about that Rockin' Picnic. Everyone should definitely go to it next year if you're from the North Central Iowa area. It's every
For
year.
sure.
It's every year Labor Day weekend.
Yep. Labor
and
Day weekend. They have like a bags tournament and smoked meats.
It's at Joe Sheldon Park in Humboldt, Iowa. There's not usually a Facebook event page set up for it. This year there was, but I think it was private. I'm not 100% sure. It was kind of weird. I couldn't invite people to it through Facebook and some other things, but it's definitely out there. Look for it next year.
We'll have to talk to their PR guy.
Yeah, it's just the way it goes. We're not quite out of time, but we're starting to run low on time. I was gonna ask you, is there anything you want to talk about specifically while we're still on here for episode number 2?
Let me think here.
'Cause we covered playing together originally. We covered your adventures in Algona and around that area. We talked about going through gear and practicing, learning the blues.
Well, I guess one thing I would kind of advise to anybody that is somewhat into music or kind of has an interest in it
Yeah, let's
or
hear it.
or something like that, don't give up. Don't quit. I that's one of the biggest regrets I've ever made.
Yes.
And that was stopping playing music and not singing and doing any of that stuff. Uh, and
Yes, I
I
would I would definitely have to say our stories parallel
well, they do,
100%
they
because
do.
I mean I played until after high school and then it was just I played in a basement. I didn't know who else to play with. I didn't know how to go out and play anywhere. I wasn't good enough to play half the time with any of my friends. So I mean, take 5 years off. That's what you did. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
give or take a few years, but you and I both just put our stuff down and walked away from it.
yeah.
And I mean, don't give up because you and I we're now roughly about 30, and we should have about 15 years of guitar playing under our belt, and we're
Oh,
sitting with about 7.
yeah.
You know, so it's yeah, giving up is definitely not an option. And it's something it's like I try to tell my students when I'm teaching guitar lessons is they say this is so difficult, it's so hard. And I said, if you and I were sitting down in an Xbox together, I would be saying the same thing. I can't play video games to save my
I
life.
can't do it.
I'm not good at it. First person shooters dead instantly. First one gone. And that's the learning curve is they sit down all day long with these video game controllers and it's so second nature to them. They don't even have to look at their hands. They don't even have to like think about what's going on. It just happens. And that's kind of where you and I are at with certain aspects of our own guitar playing skills is you and I don't even pay attention to what we're playing half the time. We're just ripping leads out and they just come
No,
out.
just trying to think ahead,
Yeah, that's all it is. So I tried to explain to him. I
letting
was
the
like, man,
body do the rest.
it sounds so cheesy, but this guitar is literally like an Xbox without a controller that's not hooked up to the internet. That's made of wood with a bunch of metal hanging off the front.
Yeah, and magnets.
Yeah. So I mean, just get good at doing this.
Really high-powered magnets.
It takes a little bit of time, but I think the most difficult thing for anybody would probably be finding something that you enjoy playing, because I mean, when I first started playing guitar, I wanted to play like punk music and metal music, and there's no way you can just rip out Megadeth your first time you pick up a guitar.
Oh no.
Like probably not even your first year if you're a slow learner, or if maybe it takes you if you don't have the time to dedicate hours a day, it takes
Well,
forever.
and here's another point. Learn how to practice.
Yes.
Cuz I know when we started out, it was like practice all the time, otherwise you're going to be a bunch of dog shit and like we didn't know what to practice. We didn't know what to practice. So we were just like
Yeah.
randomly like shoving shit down our
Yeah.
brain
I
holes.
mean, you
We
play
try
you play a pentatonic scale, and it's like, yeah, I can play it, but how do I apply this to anything?
Yeah.
Or like I've played Hit or Miss by Newfound Glory 48 times.
Perfectly.
That's not practice. Like
No.
you memorized 5 power chords and where they all go all the time. That's it. All you're doing really is
Learn what to practice and then learn how to practice.
that's a difficult thing.
And it is. Find somebody that can tell you the secrets.
Yes. There's probably somebody in your town. If you're from North Central Iowa, just drop us a line and we can put you in contact with somebody around
Oh,
your
for
area
sure.
probably. I know either Dan or myself we're pretty well versed in knowing people from about like the Fort Dodge to Algona area and a little bit east and west of there. So
Maybe Des Moines.
yeah, I mean all the way down to Des Moines, I can point you
Iowa
in some
City.
directions as to like where to go. But yeah, I mean I will have to say that it's definitely good to sit down with you and talk to you about this because your guitar playing and stylings mirror mine in quite a few ways. We just have a few variances in our stylings and play styles,
Oh, definitely.
and only a few variances maybe even in our path that we took to get where we were going to go. Because I view you as definitely as one of my peers and one of my friends, and without having you around for the last 3 years to jam with, I definitely wouldn't be doing any of this stuff, especially not with Three Finger Betty. And without Betty, I wouldn't be able to do any of the Unity stuff. So it's a step by step process that you helped put me on. I mean, it was
I feel very humble, sir.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
without you, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, I bought a PVJSX amp. I fell in love with it, and then it's like now I got to learn how to play a guitar. You know, and once I started learning how to play a guitar, I upgraded a guitar, and then you upgrade your guitar, and you're like, oh man, I'm really digging on this now.
there's the whole gear chasing.
Yep, and then you start chasing all the holy grails of gear, and you know, I've got a bass guitar. I started playing bass a little bit here and there, and that was like something else I had thought was like, well, next year if we need to play Rockin' Picnic, maybe I'll just play the bass and I'll get 2 guitarists to come in, you know. So like, There's always those kind of options to
You
do.
got a drum set now. You can play the drums too.
I might be able to play the drums on a few of the songs. You never know. And that's I don't know. That's kind of the beauty of the stockyard is what I want. It doesn't matter who's in it. I'll probably be in it, and I mean, I like to drag Dan with me most places I go, especially if I get asked to play a show because he likes to play blues and rock just like I do. So
I got a pretty face too.
yeah, it doesn't hurt to have good-looking mugs standing up front singing to everybody either. So we're getting real close to the hour here, so I'm probably gonna call it a podcast. And I want to say thank you much for sitting down with me for about an hour.
Well, thank you for having me, sir.
Discussing your musical history and some other things with me. That's it. All right.
Wow.
Sweet. Thanks,
Wow.
man. Wow. Woo. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's 2 in the bank. 2 podcasts are recorded. What did you think of that one? You can let us know on Twitter at Audible Farm. We are also on Instagram at Audible Farm. We are also on Facebook at Audible Farm. If you want to find us on YouTube, we are also on YouTube. You'll have to search for us, and we are also Audible Farm on YouTube. We have SoundCloud as well, which is where we host the podcast from. I do have a couple shows I would like to plug coming up here. I'm playing a show with Three Finger Betty on Saturday, September 29th at the Fremont in Des Moines. Show starts at 7. I do also have a show with Unity coming up on October 6th. That's also a Saturday. That's at Gabe's in Iowa City. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, listening to my guest, Dan Blair. If anybody has any further questions for him, they can tweet us at Audible Farm. We will put you guys in touch with one another. The guy's a heck of a guitar player. I love having him around. He will probably be on the podcast again because he and I live in close proximity to one another. So somebody hire this man. He needs a job playing guitar somewhere. He's the man. I want to thank everybody once again for listening to the podcast. Go ahead and tell your friends about it. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.